I read 5 historical books this week, and I'm going to tell you about them. The reason that I'm doing this video is because historical romance is the only genre of romance that I have personally never read or gotten into. It's like tale retelling. I don't know why I read. So, the reason that I had never gotten into historical romance is because when I was a child, my Nana was an avid bodice ripper reader. I didn't want to read the same things that my Nana always read when I was a kid. But it's the only genre that I haven't gotten into. And what I want to do with this channel is I want to use it to be slightly more intentional about the books that I am reading. I read 5 historical romances this week. I'm going to give you a summary of them, mostly spoiler free. If there is a spoiler, I will let you know, because I think I might have to spoil like 1 or 2 things, but I'll make it so you can skip it. So I'm going to go in order from the one that I liked the least to the one that I liked the most. I will say that I got the recommendations for these books. I went to romance.io, which is an amazing tool to get in a mood where you just want to read a specific trope. You can search by trope on there, and it's great. You can also search by genre. So I looked at historical, I looked at most famous, and that's how I found a couple of them. A couple of them I found on Arson's Romance books. First, I'm going to talk about The Seduction of a Highland Lass by Maya Banks. I think this is a Reddit recommendation, and I want to talk about this one first because it is the lowest ranked in the books that I read. So we meet our main character. His name is Alaric McCabe. It really pissed me off because I watched The Vampire Diaries and I thought that it was pronounced Alaric, like Alaric Saltzman, but the audiobook pronounced it Alaric, and I don't like that. Anyways, Alaric McCabe, he's taking off from his lands to go visit another clan. This takes place in Scotland. Year unknown. I
tried to look into this because I was so confused. I couldn't figure out if it was like, so I know just about absolutely nothing of Scottish history. I live in America, and if you went public school in America, you would know that we didn't really learn about, or at least I didn't learn about any other country's history post 1600. So maybe like the history, whatever. So I had no idea. I have absolutely no idea what year this takes place. It could be 1200, which maybe. But for my research, I found that Outlander takes place in like the 1700s. So I really have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
But they're Scottish and they're clans. So he's taking off from his lands to go to a neighboring clan to ask the daughter of the chief, her name is Riona MacDonald, for her hand in marriage, because the hope is that a union between them would broker peace between the 2 clans, and they would become allies, because Alaric would be the laird. I feel like I'm speaking in tones, and Alaric would be like one of the leaders of the clan, so whatever. On his way there, though, he is shot with an arrow by assailant unknown, and grievously injured, he finds himself on the doorstep of one Keely. Now, Keely was formerly Keely MacDonald. She was exiled from the MacDonald clan. You find out later in the book why. But she's a good person and a really confident healer, so she drags his ass inside and hops to work and on healing him. They're like bonding. He kisses her in his like feverish stupor. This is also like 20 pages into the book, so I really don't find that anything before the 10% mark is a spoiler, but that's just me. So, they're vibey, okay? They got vibes. And he keeps calling her Angel, and she keeps calling him Warrior. For me, but. So after some time, like a few days, she's been healing Alaric. He's in and out of consciousness, like he's running a fever. She wakes up to a man looming over her. And who is this? It is Alaric's brothers, the McCabe's. I think their names are Ewan and Caitlin. They have come to take Alaric home. After needling Keely with questions and like basically interrogating her, they kind of just kidnap her, like just throw her over their shoulder and take her with them because they need a healer in their clan. And she is none too pleased about this, and she does make it known. But they do end up going back to the McCabe Keep. I guess a keep is a castle. I honestly did no research aside from like a cursory glance at Wikipedia, so I could just be making absolutely no sense, and no one would know. I mean, someone would know. I sure wouldn't. Um, they do go back to the McCabe Keep, and Keeley agrees to stay at least until Ewan, which is Alaric's brother's wife, has her baby so that she can be a midwife and deliver the baby. Um, she continues to take care of Alaric in the meantime, but soon finds out about his like pending betrothal to Riona McDonald. She was friends with Riona when they were younger. They were best friends, sister of her heart. Um, and from that point forward, she's trying to like guard her heart because she wants him bad. She wants him so bad. Um, so that's my little blurb. So now my thoughts. I did rate this book 2 stars on Goodreads and in my head. I thought that they had sex in the book a bit too soon. I really did not enjoy the use of the term maidenhead. And also, I really hate when virginity scenes are like kind of violent and gross. And not violent in like an assault way, just in bursting forth through the barrier of one's hymen. I don't care for that. Which I think is kind of like par for the course for some historical romance. But it doesn't have to be because I read a few and this is the only one that like made me go, ugh. I will say that his reaction to her past was well written for a dude in the medieval times. And so I did enjoy that. And I really like that Keeley got to find a family with his clan and she cultivates female friendships, which I think is great. I love when a character in a book has, close female friendships. I sure do. Um, but then it started to go downhill for me because I really did not give a singular fuck about the conflict. I honestly barely remember, but I knew that it was annoying me, and the last 100 pages or so of this book was such a slog for me that I almost enough, but I wanted to see how they wrap this up, so I did not. I just didn't really buy it. The main conflict was that he is betrothed. He has given his word that he's going to marry Marilyn McDonald, and he's fallen in love with Keeley. And were there not a third brother, I would think that this has some merit. However, there is a third brother, and I think I have to spoil it to explain what I hated so much, but he doesn't factor into that equation until like the last 4 pages. So, um, in my notes, I wrote, his brother loves his wife, but somehow wants Alaric to sacrifice love for the good of the clan. Send the incel. He's not doing shit but hating women. And I'm talking about the other brother. Um, oh, at 60%, 67%, I wrote, losing steam, ready for something different. I don't think Highland romance is for me. I'm bored, everyone's dumb, and there's still like 80 pages left. I need something different, book too long. Okay, big spoilies now. At the end of the book, he is literally at the altar with Brianna McDonald, and Keeley is watching while weeping up on a hill somewhere, and someone tries to kill him again. I honestly don't remember learning who did that. I could have missed it because I did listen on audiobook, but Keeley fucking runs down and uses herself as a human shield. And as she's about to perish, he marries her. So I did not like that were it not for her almost dying, coming like very, very close to death. The whole reason that they got married was because they thought she was going to die immediately. I did not like the fact that had that not happened, there would have been no happily ever after. They would have just sat there and pined for each other for however fucking knows who knows how fucking long. I did not like that at all. That's what bumped it from like a just like a low 3 stars, like a 3 stars flat or like 2.5 stars down to a 2. And honestly, because I did enjoy the first like 40% or so, that's why it's not a 1 star. I really did not like this book. I did not like it at all. Wow, now that I'm talking about it, I really didn't like it. Thinking back on it, I just thought that conflict was so fucked. Anyways, Yes, that's my thoughts on The Seduction of a Hiding Lass by Maya Banks. I don't, it was not for me, and that was the whole point of this. So, the next book in the lineup that I read is The Duke Starts a Scandal by Sophie Jordan. So, we meet our main character, Susanna, as she is walking down the road and she almost gets pancaked by a carriage. In said carriage is Lucian. They immediately have beef because he's like, "Oh, oi, watch where you're going." And she's like, "I was walking in the road. Can't you stare?" And she says, "This is private property. This is the Duke of Penning's manor." And he says, "Well, I am the Duke of Penning." And she goes, "I'm the housekeeper." So he's like, "Those dudes that have been living there are frauds and they lied." Which is kind of crazy now that I think about it, how uh, you could just really do anything in the olden times. This book also takes place, like, I think it's just Regency thing. So she is now his employee, and pretty quickly we find out three things. Susanna has been working since age 11, and she has secrets. Two, Lucian is not nearly the silver spoon duke that Susanna thinks that he is. And three, he wants her carnally. So much so, it's really throwing him off his game. So Lucian's main goal, with his newfound status as a duke, because he was like the sixth in line or something, and his dad died. His main goal is to marry his sisters off so that they are afforded some security in the world, because he had to do things to earn money that he doesn't regret but doesn't want his sisters to have to do. But he can't do that if all he wants is to debauch the housekeeper. And he tells Susanna that he might be making household staff changes. And she's like, "You're firing me?" And she's right, because it really is so fucked up that he wanted to fire her from a job she was good at because he found her hot and sexy. She knows very little about him at this point and thinks that he is an entitled little rich boy because at this point, he might not have always been rich, but he is rich now. So, and he's being a dick. And he thinks that she is a prudish woman who somehow sees through him and finds him unworthy of being the Duke of Penning. So basically, they have a lot of preconceived notions, but boy, are they horny for each other. I liked that the hero, Lucian, had discusses frankly doing sex work to support his family after his mother fell into a depression of what he did. I liked that he was not filled with shame for what he did. His main concern was that it would reflect on his sisters were anyone to find out. Wait. I like that the main character, we find out pretty soon after the beginning of the book, is not a virgin. Has she only had sex like 3 times? Yeah, but I don't have to read about the violent tearing of one's hymen, so I'm good. Points there for having interesting characters with interesting backstories. I think that what I'm really finding is that for me, historical romance, third act conflict really makes or breaks it for me. Because if third act conflict is really annoying, I think that it can turn an enjoyable book, at least like moderately enjoyable book, into a massive slog. So I found the third act conflict to just be very annoying and it went on way too long. And I don't even think that they kiss until like the 75% mark. But they also are like, they're so mean to one another. She hates his guts. She like briefly mentions how attractive he is, but they do not like each other. And their preconceived notions of one another are not even solved until the 85% mark. And even then, I think that there was so much in the middle that I honestly don't even remember what, but I remember that there was not a lot of like relationship development. Like I wanted more, and I just didn't get it. Also takes a break in the middle to have a chapter where his sister is starts like making out with the his butler. which I also found annoying because I don't want to read that. It does come into play later, but I think that it could have come into play in the way that it came into play even without that chapter from, like their POV. So this was number 4 in the ranking because I did like it more than the first one that I talked about, but it was not. I don't think it was my like. It just wasn't for me. I tend to find misunderstandings, misconceptions is a trope that rarely works well for me personally. Um, and when it does work, I think that it's good, but it very rarely is done well enough and believably enough that it that it works for me. So next, I read Always by Lindsay Sands. And I found this specifically because I didn't want to read 5 Regency romance books, which I think like Regency is the most common era that is present in historical romance. So I wanted to try to get something from like each area and kind of figure out like what is my niche were I to like continue reading more historical romance. I found that so this was on romance.io again. So this takes place in the 1100s. So we meet Eric, who has just been cheated on by his betrothed. Her name was Delia. And he's whining about how women are the devil, women are Satan, and they're evil whores. And so we're not off to a good start here, okay? Already he has just caught her cheating on him. But we will hold him accountable. And just as he's stating to his friend that he's never going to get married, the king walks in. The king of England. He basically tells Eric, hey, you're going to marry my illegitimate daughter, Rosamund, with quickness and haste because I have reasons that I'm the king, and if you don't, I may or may not draw and quarter you. Tee hee hee, but I'm not like the other kings. I'm a fun king. And he's confused because no one knew about Rosamund, apparently. We find out that Rosamund, daughter of his famous lover, who it is rumored that his wife murdered because he loved her more, or something along those lines. Um, and we find out that Rosamund was raised by nuns in an abbey, which is my name. So they set off, they head towards the Abbey. King is like, hey, girly, time to get married. And she's really confused because she was going to, tomorrow, the day after this, she was going to take the veil and she was going to become a nun. So she's like, oh, well, you are the King of England and also my father. So I guess that's that. And the nuns give her some sex ed um, prior to this wedding while she's getting dressed and I don't know. And, they're nuns, so they're presumably virgins. And they're just giving her, like, the don'ts. Like, don't have sex on Sundays, or Wednesdays, or Thursdays, or whatever. Or, like, during Lent. you know, like, old timey Catholic stuff. And she's, like, genuinely has no idea what consummation even is. She's like, "Yeah, I know, like, but, like, what actually happens?" And no one's telling her. She has no idea what's going on. She'd never even like met another man besides her father. The nuns like never talked about it, or well, and the bishop or whatever of the church. She has absolutely no idea how the mechanics of sex even begin to work, which is honestly, it was honestly really funny watching Rosamund navigate that and Eric getting flustered and uncomfortable. And I was like fully cackling out loud at some points. Rosamund was very ADHD coded. Um, and I wrote, Eric acts like the dude from Love is Blind who only wears America masks. Um, and what I meant by that is one of the big conflicts during the book is that Eric was cheated on, which we know. His mother also cheated, also his mother cheated on his father, so he's already got like mommy issues, and he doesn't want to let Rosamund do anything. And Rosamund is ADHD coded. because there's no such thing as ADHD back then, but if there was, she'd have an Adderall prescription for sure. And she was always in the stable helping the horses and doing like veterinary stuff at the nunnery. And he won't let her go to the stables because he doesn't want her to happen upon any man because he's so afraid that she's going to cheat on him. And I just found it really repetitive and annoying that like he treated her so shittily. He would even acknowledge it in the book. She asks for so little, and yet, and everyone's like, dude, you're being ridiculous. And I just found it very annoying. I think that the conflict is really where it falls apart for me, which could just be the fact that I live in the year of our Lord 2023, almost 2024. Um, and so I see solutions where perhaps there would not have been a solution in 1183 or whatever, but I just don't. I did really like the ending. I'm not going to spoil it, but I will tell you that there is a villain monologue in the vein of I would have gotten it away with it too if it were not for you meddling kids. Um, so look forward to that if you read this book. I rated it 3 stars because I found it frustrating. It started to get frustrating around the 60% mark. Like I said, the third act conflict sort of is where it like falls off for me. And this wasn't, but it was so funny and unserious for the first 20 to 30%. It was genuinely so funny. I was laughing out loud with my headphones in at work at my desk, listening to it on an audiobook. And I really enjoyed it until I didn't anymore. But I did really love Rosamund as a character. I thought that she was a really compelling character. I did not fuck with Eric, and they did not convince me to fuck with him by the end of the book. So, I mean, like, a little bit, but barely. The first book that I read, which is ranked number 2, but was the first book I read in chronological order, Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. So I have heard great things about Lisa Kleypas. She's a very prolific romance author and also very esteemed in the historical romance area. Her and like Tessa Dare, I would say, are like the two big ones now, like in this time period. I wanted to read a Lisa Kleypas book. Like I said, I've heard good things. This is about Sebastian and Evie. Sebastian is a rake in need of a wife because his father has fucked the family fortune and he's penniless. And Evangeline is an heiress in need of a husband because she is living with her deceased mother's abusive family. Like, they are very abusive to her. They treat her like shit. And they won't let her go see her dad, who is dying. Her dad has a lot of money, but he is not in the peerage. So he has no title. He's just a guy. But he has a lot of money because he runs/ran a gambling hall. The family that she is currently living with is trying to force her into a marriage with her cousin so that they can get their hands on her money. And she comes to Sebastian with a proposal as he needs a wife, she needs a husband, she needs some way to protect herself from her family because she's pretty sure if they end up getting her married to her cousin and then they get her inheritance that they're gonna off her because they will have no use for her. So, okay. So prior to getting married, so they agree on this that they will get married. It will be a marriage of convenience. They will consummate exactly one time, and then perhaps later, if she wants to have a child to keep herself busy, they can consider it. But he's gonna fuck off, and he's gonna have mistresses, whatever. Um, but this is olden times, okay? Do remember that a marriage must be consummated, lest it be able to be annulled. But Sebastian's like, whatever, we'll bone once, I bore easily. So they get married, they do the deed, and Sebastian's immediately like, wait, that was kind of good. I think I want to fuck my wife. He's like, I'd like some more of that, and Evie's like, no, I told you just one time, just so the marriage is legal and we move on with our lives and see as little of each other as possible. He's like, all right, fine, thinking she'll change her mind. But essentially, a few weeks later, they take a trip to where her father is ailing in back to London. They went to Scotland. I don't know. So they go back to London where her father is, and after a few weeks, he's like, I need you biblically. And she's like, look, because at this point she realizes, like, she's not going to be able to just, like, have sex with him. He's her husband, and she does find him attractive, and she is starting to like him more and more. And she's like, I'm not going to be able to just, like, have sex with you all willy nilly, and especially not if you're having sex with other people. And he's like, fine, we'll be monogamous then. And she's like, I really don't believe you. And so they come to the agreement that if he can forego having sex with anyone else, including her, having sex at all, if he can take a celibacy vow for the next 3 months, that she will have sex with him as much and as often as he wants. That's the same. As much and however much he wants going forward. And he's like, fine, I'll take that deal. He agrees and the relationship progresses from there. And I thought this book, I think, has the best banter. There's like one point where he gets like a little yelly. I think that was this one, but they just had like really good banter. He was like, I wrote in my notes that he was like very like Damon Salvatore esque dry humor, which is something that I love. He was a very Damon Salvatore esque character. So if that is something that works for you, and you also perhaps watch Bridgerton and you're like, let's combine those two, this would be a great book for you. Um, Overall, I rated this book 4 stars. Like I said, this is the first one that I read for the video, and I think that if had this not gone well, I would not have continued reading any of these, but it did go really well, and I actually really liked it. So I think that going forward, I'm gonna try to read like a few more basically this books. So so my number one book of this video, number one ranked, is The Duke I Tempted by Scarlett Peckham. So we meet our two main characters, Archer, who is Duke of Westmead. He is a man with secrets and a propensity for putting his foot in his mouth anytime that he is in spitting distance of one Poppy Cavendish. Now, Poppy is a gardener and she runs a nursery, like a tree nursery. And Poppy is an independent woman, very Independent. Do you know what that means? She was raised by her uncle, and after his death, she was meant to receive his fortune in his will so that she could open up her own nursery. But he was penniless. He died broke as fuck, and someone else in her family got the house. So she's got like a month to get the fuck out. And kind of like, she's also broke. And one Constance Stonewell, Duke of Westmead's sister, asks her to decorate the ballroom for an upcoming ball. She wants it to look like a forest inside. She wants it to be very cottagecore, very whimsical. And Poppy does not want to do this, not even a little bit, but she needs the money, and the money would get her a long way. So she agrees. So she's spending a lot of time at the Westmead home. And Constance, she's spending a lot of time with Constance, but she's also spending a lot of time with the Duke of Westmead. And she lives by herself, so anytime it's like late and she needs to go home, he's like, I'll go with you. I'll ride in the carriage. I'll take you in my carriage so you don't have to walk. Um, I thought that the relationship was developed very well. Eventually, she twists her ankle and she's still working on the ballroom. So he is like, well, you're just going to stay here then. And stay she does. But spending all this time, which I thought illustrated really well in the book, the relationship development. Spending all this time, she becomes like more and more intrigued by him, and she's like, maybe he's not just like a dipshit who pisses me off every time he opens his mouth. Which like, all. However, something happens at the ball, and Poppy leaves in the middle of it, and like very late at night, and Julian, is that his name? Archer. Oh my god. Archer notices that she's gone, and he follows her so that to make sure that she's okay, because she's a woman walking alone and it's a pretty long walk. So, however, it's really late and someone sees them So it gets talked about in a gossip magazine or a gossip newspaper or whatever. And this is not good because she is a spinster, okay? She's like 28, by the way. And they're like, they talk about her as if she is an old crone, fully as if she is an evil hag, just like the witch from Hansel and Gretel. And this gossip in the papers is not good for Poppy's business. And Archer's like, this is my fault because I followed her, and also I'm the reason that she left in the first place, so I'm gonna fix it. And he goes to Poppy and he says, we should get married. And she's like, pardon? He's like, yeah, like, you'll have all my connections. I'm a really good businessman. I've got a lot of money, more money than I know what to do with, and I would be happy to help you in any way I can, especially since this is my fault. And she's like, what the fuck do you get out of this? And he's like, an heir. She's like, a child? And she's like, no, absolutely not. Because her parents died when she was young, and she grew up without parents, and she does not want to have a child just to fulfill a legacy or something. But eventually they come to an agreement, and she ultimately agrees because she really likes him, and she just kind of wants to be around him. So we go from there. I really liked Archer, and I really loved Poppy. I thought that their relationship was really well fleshed out. It did feel like a very long book, even though it wasn't, like, just in terms of story beats. Um, but I thought that this was a really great book, and I liked it so much that I continued that I also checked out the following book from my library, and I read it. I just finished it this morning, and I dare say I liked it even more, which is about Archer's sister and a guy. Some guy. But it was really good, and I think that this was a I think this was a fun little experiment. I think I would like to do this to branch out. Like I said, this is really the only like untapped genre for me that I haven't gone into, but there are other genres that I've read like very little of, such as like, I don't know, alien romance. I've read a few, but really like two, honestly. So, and also monster romance. I've read quite a few, but I do find it fun. So I've been thinking about doing maybe monster, whatever. Um, I've been thinking about doing monster romance or like sci-fi, aliens, dystopia romance. Just but I had a surprisingly good time reading these books. I think that what I have found is that I prefer something that has like a lot of banter, a lot of wit. I prefer like a and where it really and a third act conflict has to be believable to me. So, um, but I did not think that I was going to like these books because I also heavily prefer dual POV first person, and they were all dual POV third person, which is very common in historical. But I didn't mind it, and I think that was because it was on audio. But I had a lot of fun, and I really hope that anyone watches this and enjoys, and not just my friend who likes to play it in the background while they wash dishes. But also, if anyone has any suggestions, let me know.